Have you ever thought about how your food arrives on your plate? Although purchasing our food is becoming increasingly convenient, supplying it is not, and long labours in treacherous seas have meant that it never was easy. So how has the fishing industry in North Shields survived the last 50 years of complex laws and wars over fishing rights? And does this ancient industry have a future? The first of these wars was a long drawn-out battle over fishing rights with Newcastle that began not long after the fish quay was first established by the monks of Tynemouth Priory in 1225. And the problem of fishing rights did not remain confined to history. The first Cod War began in 1958 when Iceland claimed the fishing rights to ocean previously newed by British fishing trawlers.
As soon as the Cod War finished, that was it. You couldn't go and fish in Icelandic waters. So the impact followed right through the industry. No trawlers, nobody working on a fish quay, no fish, and that was it. Capiche. And then in the 70s and 80s, a big massive fleet of sea netters came to North Shields from Scotland and all around the area. This place here, from the length of that market, right at the end of here, fish, like you've never seen in your life. Boxes and boxes and boxes every day. Because then everybody was after fish, and this was one of the capitals of fish. All the boats, well, they were all looking for crews. So actually, the industry in North Shields took off because local men started to become employed on the Scottish boats and all the rest of it. Then all of a sudden, after 20 years, finish. Quotas and everything put a finish on it.
The need to provide a cheap source of protein after World War II led to overfishing, devastating both the marine ecosystem and the fishing industry. In 1970, the European Union intervened by setting limits or quotas on the number of fish that any boat could catch.
Quotas and the rest of it keep you in port. It's a hard life. You don't get paid if you don't catch fish.
Whereas many in the industry say the quota system has made it sustainable by allowing fish stocks to replenish, fishermen are more hostile to the system, saying that it does not reflect increasing fish stocks and is putting them out of business.
Fishing industry in somewhere like North Shields is much smaller than it would have been, say, 50 years ago. And I think that's partly because of the stocks of the North Sea not being there any longer. But I think fishermen would say also it was a price that we paid for joining the then common market. It is a constant struggle for individuals. I think we get a romantic picture of what fishing is like. It's actually a very dangerous, perhaps the most dangerous peacetime industry. And it's also a business.
The problem with the fishing is a fisherman has to absorb all of the costs, like fuel, food, harbour dues. With the price of fuel going up and everything else going up in price, we're not making any money and the industry's collapsing.
You've got to burn fuel to go to sea to catch fish. If you can't catch fish, you've still got to pay the bill. Who's going to pay the bill? That's how you get into debt. You see boats go away, they'll do 2 weeks' work, they'll come home, they'll get nothing because they never caught anything. And that expense for that trip with the fuel and all the rest of it, it goes on to the following trip. There's a fella here, he lost a boat because of the bank that he's been skipper of and worked for 7 years. They didn't give him any help, nothing whatsoever. They took the boat away from him, bankrupt, finish, end of story. And it's happening all the time. The banks, who are the main lender behind the fishing industry, they will not lose. And if you don't meet the payments, eventually they repossess it. And that's the crew, the skipper, the boat out of action, gone. Years ago I was on a boat called the Boat I Made with a skipper called George Crawford. He used to go to Brussels to all the meetings. It never done anybody any good, ever. They make a rule for them and we have to abide by it. There isn't enough representation in Europe. The government keeps saying they're going to do this about quotas, that about quotas. They never do. They don't. Everything just gets harder all the time. It's nothing easy.
People that is not closely attached to the fishing industry running the job, they haven't got a clue what's going on at the fishing. They don't know what it's about. And they're trying to organise it, and it's just mistake after mistake after mistake because they have no experience of fishing and the seas are always changing.
I think part of the solution is making sure that the fishermen themselves are more involved in the management of stocks rather than decisions being handed down from on high. But I think there's a role for the public as well. We've got to learn to eat different kinds of fish. We've got to learn to eat the ugly fish. And the fishermen have to learn to market their produce a lot better.
Plenty of fish out there. I reckon everybody says the scientists have got it wrong. You should go out on a fishing boat. Instead of an MP getting up in court or in the Houses, Parliament, and saying there isn't any fish, put them on a fishing boat. Go out to Peterhead, Fraserburgh. You'll see fish. You see it landed every day, plenty of it. But they put a quota on it.
There is a future for the fishing industry, I do believe, but it has to be more sustainable. We have to see the smaller boats like the ones here in North Shields getting more access to the quota that's set by Europe. But we also need to get the science closer to the anecdotal evidence of fishermen as well, to make sure that the catches are closer to what can be sustained in terms of taking stock. I think that's been a big issue, that the fishermen have believed that the stocks have been healthier than they actually have been, and the scientists have taken a different view. We need to bring those two things together.
I would be considered a young skipper and I'm 50 years of age. If there's something not done within 5 years, it will collapse in Britain.
In the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, plenty of work, plenty of fish. In come the quotas, everything finished. 90% of the fishermen that you work down here now, do you know what they do now? Security guards on building sites, because they don't know anything else. They haven't been trained to do anything else. We've enjoyed it, we've had the good times, now it's the bad times.